to the society and the individuals involved. A little bit about myself. I'm going to take you with me onto this amazing journey of becoming an immigrant entrepreneur through self-discovery, adventures. I've had a lot of heartaches, challenges, but also had a lot of enjoyment, excitement. So stay with me. I was born and raised in China on the East Coast in a town called Xuzhou. It's a medium-sized city. Well, I say medium-sized, there are about over 8 million people there. In the US, you have the federal government, the state, county, and the city. In China, it goes central government, province, state, and city, then county, then townships. So a city in China is equivalent to a county in the United States. Now, there are 100 counties in North Carolina, but there are only about a dozen cities in my home province. So the size of my hometown is about 8 to 10 counties in North Carolina. I was an English major in college. Anybody has ever been corrected by English majors for grammar or spelling? We're fanatic about these things. Now, I studied English when I was in 4th grade. That wasn't by choice. I was forced to because I was horrible at math. My 4th grade math teacher basically said, well, she's not going to go anywhere. My mother said, well, she didn't tell me until much later, which I really appreciated, but she said, you have to learn English. Now, in those days, schools did not teach English until middle school. Now they started at preschool. In those days, she said, well, if you start at 4th grade, you can get ahead when you're in middle school and you would not have another challenge. So she forced me to sit there every hour, every day for an hour, listening to this horrible English. I had no idea what it was, but 6 months later, I started to understand it and fell in love with the language. So I really appreciate what my mother had done for me. Now, after I graduated, I did a bunch of different jobs, import and export. I worked in corporate jobs. One of them, like I worked in a nuclear power station doing admin work, and I did sales for a magazine. And the last 4 years before I came to the US, I was teaching English in a couple of universities because I got worn out in corporate world. I had health problems and couldn't sleep. I had a friend who was an English professor. She said, why don't you come and teach? I met with the deans and they gave me the job. So I taught, that was 4 years. That was the longest job I ever held. I had 9 jobs within 10 years. I jokingly tell people I'm like an octopus. I'm into each and everything. But the truth is, I have ADHD. Now, you may be familiar with ADD, attention deficit disorder. The H means hyperactivity. So I am constantly in a learning mode. I have to learn something, to do something. I cannot sit in front of a computer all day long. That would drive me crazy. And I get bored very easily. Anybody had similar experience? So in those days, it was very difficult for women to be promoted to executive position. So my solution was to change jobs, go to a different profession. Every time I felt I found something that I would stay with forever, it became boring. I became very miserable. So I changed jobs. That was one of the reasons. Came to North Carolina in August 2000. I chose North Carolina because there were very few Asians here. I want to be immersed in American culture. Well, I got my wish, but the drawback was I got constantly stared at in Walmart. People had never seen an Asian before. Now, it made me feel very uncomfortable in the beginning, but I got used to it. Now, you go to Costco, you see a lot of Asians there. There are more and more, which is great. It's becoming an international city. I came to study counseling at Wake Forest University. Now, the thing I did not know at that time was counseling in the US is very different from that in China. In China, it's mostly psychiatry. There may be a handful of private clinics doing counseling, but the majority of the time, if you have mental illness, they'll just give you medication. Here, it's more about talking. I remember having to memorize over 100 words of feelings. So that didn't work out. I decided to change to study child development and went on to Florida State. Now, by the time I finished all my coursework, my advisor left. She got a chair position in a different university. I could not find anyone to supervise my thesis. So eventually I was fortunate to be able to get into UNCG to continue studying child development. I got my degree in August 2004. Took me 4 years to get my master's degree. I was ready for a break. The first thing I had to learn when I came to the US was individualism. I was encouraged to be different, to have my own opinions. But in Chinese culture, it's more about collectivism. You have to follow the rules, you have to fit in. You do not rock the boat. Everything you do, it has to follow the traditions. It took me a long time to be able to make that transition. Let me tell you what my master's degree in child development did for me. The answer is nothing. I couldn't get a job because if you wanted to do research, you have to have a PhD degree. For the teaching jobs, they think I was overqualified. Then I remembered, oh yeah, I loved languages because I studied translation in college. And it was also always part of my job in corporate world. I was interpreting for executives. So I sought out some translation companies in this area. Well, that was in 2005. Very few people had even heard of Mandarin. So a lot of the request was for Spanish translation work. But I was able to get a few jobs that got me started. In August 2008, I had an opportunity to start my own company and I took it. In the beginning, all I wanted to do was to do translation work in Asian languages, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, so on and so forth. And lo and behold, clients started asking questions because of the mistakes they made, which I described was they were going in the wrong direction on the cultural expressway. For example, in Asian culture, you do not tell elderly patients they were dying or they had cancer. That's a taboo. You tell their adult children who will hide it from them, trying to make them feel good till the end. Now in the US, it's, people believe patients need to be informed. Another example would be companies go to Asia to attend a trade show and they would talk to a potential customer for hours. Americans like to talk, which I have learned when I came here. But what they did not realize was Asians don't like people who talk too much. Have you ever heard of a saying called name dropping? They don't like people to do that either because they think you're bragging about yourself, showing off, because modesty is very much valued in Asian culture. So I started doing informational sessions. That's from 15 minutes, then became a workshop for 2 hours, and then became a full day. I would talk to executives, I would talk to government officials and universities and nonprofit organizations. 5 or 6 years ago, companies became more conscious about preparing instead of waiting for problems to happen. So I would sit with them to plan their strategies before each project, each meeting, and also sometimes help them to get money back because they had a problem with quality issues and their agent suppliers were not cooperating. So I became an international business strategist. It was a big leap from an English major to an international business strategist. 20 years ago, if you told me this was what I was going to do, I would not have believed you. Because when I started to learn English, I wanted to do literature translation. It was all about literature, nothing to do with business. You see, my mother grew up in a family where education was highly valued. And there was a saying in Chinese, all merchants are sneaky. They're not trustworthy. So I was brought up being told to stay away from the business world. But things change, people change. It's a different environment. I would like to share with you some of the lessons I learned. I'm here to tell you nothing I have learned in the past, whether it was in school or at work or in business, was wasted. I've used up everything I have learned. I'll give you an example. I shared earlier that the transition from collectivism to individualism. In graduate school, I had to learn to speak up, to share my views to my classmates, even though they may sound ridiculous in my head, because nobody wants to be told they're stupid. But that's what I had to, it was very hard to be able to do that, to trust that nobody would laugh at me. In business, it's more important too. Clients may have different ideas about what they want to do, or what they need, or which direction they want to go. But based on my experience and what I know, sometimes their decision may not be the best one. I have to be able to, it's very difficult to fall into that trap, agree with them for everything so that they will keep you. No, clients hire you to make decisions for them, to help solve their problems. If they kept doing what they were doing, they wouldn't needed me. So I had to basically be very politely and thank them for their sharing the information with me and their visions. But I would say, based on my experience, I suggest we go this route or we try this method. I have to keep my own opinion. Another thing I had learned in counseling was active listening. Now, there's a very big difference between listening and hearing. You may have heard the saying, somebody has selective hearing. They just want to hear what they want to hear. But listening, and especially active listening, is very important. You're listening, trying to understand the meanings behind the words, trying to make sure that you got what they said right. You can repeating it back or ask for confirmation. This is extremely important in the business world. I have worked with students or college graduates. The one thing I've noticed the most was I would tell them to do something and they went about and did it. They thought they understood what I had told them. In the end, it turned out their understanding was wrong. Had they asked me to clarify, to confirm, these things would not have happened. Maybe I understand as students, you're afraid of being told, oh, why don't you know how to do it? Or you don't understand what I said, you're stupid. But in the business world, there's no stupid questions. Especially as entrepreneurs, when you work with clients or investors, make sure you got what they ask you to do. Clients wanted to be confirmed. They like, if you ask them questions, you want them to make sure that you got the gist, they appreciate it because they feel that you care about them. I'm going to share with you some tips to grow. That involves goal setting, risk-taking, observation, and work ethic. Set a goal, but don't be afraid of change. Ever since I was in middle school, I wanted to own a publishing house, to publish literatures from other countries, to introduce them to the Chinese audience, and vice versa. That was one reason I chose English as a major. But when I graduated from college, I realized it was very difficult to own my own business at that time. That was in the 90s, early 90s. You had to have a huge amount of money or a lot of connections with the government. So I tabled that idea and went about and did some other jobs, different professions, trying different things. You never know what's going to happen. I can't wait what my next step is going to be. Always keep an open mind. Take calculated risks. There's a difference between calculated risks and recklessness. I was told that all engines start with controlled explosions, including car engines. So every time you start your car, there's an explosion, but it's safe because of the technology used, craftsmanship, and proper maintenance. On the contrary, going about 100 miles an hour on the expressway is not only illegal, it's very dangerous. That's recklessness. Starting a company or your own business involves risk-taking because you can't control the market. You don't know how other people are going to do, especially your competitors. But what you can do is to do your homework, do your research of the market and the products, and talk to people like Sam in the Entrepreneur Center. They'll point you to the right direction and give you advice on how to avoid certain mistakes and go on and learn from others. Learning through observation. Remember when you were kids, you were curious about everything you see, everything you hear. And you would ask your parents questions. Some of the questions they're not comfortable in answering, but that's how you learn. Entrepreneurs are naturally curious. We want to solve problems. We want to invent the next big thing to help others, to benefit the society. When I first started my own business, I used to go to all kinds of events. I would watch how other people interact with others, how they talk about their business, how they do an elevator pitch. I watch all kinds of activities. I watch their successes. I learn from their failures. Always keep your ears and eyes open. You never know what you're going to learn. Work ethic. I cannot stress this enough. Remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of the work is accomplished by 20% of the people. Now you have a choice to make. You can be the 20% that outwork other people, or you can be the 80% that just follow the masses and do what you're told to do. Work smart, but always work hard. I remember in the beginning having 80-hour work weeks or even 100-hour weeks. I had to work evenings, weekends, sometimes on vacations. I remember bringing my BlackBerry to Disneyland, but I'm not saying that you need to do that. You have to keep a balance between life and work. But I always remember, if you don't want to do anything, nobody else will either. I remember one of the feedback I received from my clients after each project, and also from my associates, is you work really hard, you're so diligent, and you go out of your way to accomplish job. You be a good example, but entrepreneurs do this because they're passionate about something. And that should be one of the biggest motivations for you to work hard. Let's all stand up. Please stand up. The Sam, so what I'm trying to say is you can find your path, but you can't find it by sitting on your butt. Not literally, metaphorically, because you have to do something, whether it's online research, whether attending virtual events like this one, there are now virtual networking events, or go talk to people like Sam, ask for their feedback, advice, or go read something or study something. So always learn, keep on learning. Don't just sit there, wait, because your path is not going to come to you. I'll leave you with this. Dreams do come true. It may not be the original dream you had, may have been modified, revised, or even completely changed. That's okay, as long as you're enjoying the journey. Because entrepreneurship is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You will enjoy the process, even if there are challenges and pains. I'm here to tell you this, that you have a gift that the world needs. You need to go find it. Look into your heart, and your dream will come true. Thank you. Ready to take, Casey, any questions?
Yeah, sorry I cut off before. I had to deal with some family stuff. But yeah, I was just like with the whole thing about translating what you talked about, how I know like more than one language. I know Mandarin. I know, like you said, from in China, there's different provinces, and the different provinces have their own language. So mine is in Fuzhou, so I speak Fuzhounese.
Okay.
And I am current, and that makes three because I know English, obviously. And the last one, since my mom's side speaks more Mandarin, my dad's side speaks more Cantonese. I'm actually trying to self-teach myself Cantonese using this app, and I learned a little bit, but I'm not in the whole I'm not fluent in it yet.
Cantonese is a totally different language.
Yeah, I know. It's like some of the words it's funny how the thing with me comprehending language, I usually pick it up by like just observing like around me and stuff with like growing up in an Asian household and having my grandparents live with me and they only know how to speak, our fluent like our native language. I kind of grew up around that. And then like with the whole Cantonese thing, it was like I realized that because I went to New York and New York seems to have more Cantonese speakers than Mandarin from from where I am. And then I really am interested in learning language too. So I thought it'd be like a great opportunity to kind of learn it myself. And then I found out that like most of the Cantonese words actually kind of like sounded like Mandarin, and some of them actually sounded like my native language. So it wasn't that hard to pick up some of the things. So I thought it was pretty cool. That's why I kept learning Cantonese.
Yeah, I think there are 7 tones in Cantonese, only 4 in Mandarin.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, let me know if I can help.
Yeah, so I was like wondering, like regarding also like having the like translating thing, learning how to translate everything. Do you have like any advices or like classes you think I could like take to kind of advance more in Mandarin, like in the business world, kind of more professionally?
So from English to Mandarin or vice both ways.
Like just in general, like most of the terms in Mandarin, like when it comes to being more advanced, like bigger vocabulary, it's going to be like a little harder, kind of like entrepreneurship kind of things, like big words like that, and then like learning how to know how to say it when you're like going into the business world, and then like you're having to translate to all these clients and everything.
Okay, yeah, shoot me an email and we'll be happy to talk over the phone with you and
Okay.
give you some tips.
Well, Mary, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story with us. It's amazing the journey that you've come through and gone through, and I'm sure most people on the call on the Zoom meeting today can relate to some aspects of what you said. I did want to ask a few questions. It's obviously open to the all the audience to ask questions, but this transition from your translation services into consulting and how important this culture of differences are, especially on the Asian front. Maybe you speak a little bit more about how some of our new entrepreneurs or people who are thinking about doing business and they're thinking about sourcing in China, how would they know when they would need such services? How much can they go on their own before they would need to reach out to someone like you? And maybe you also talk about some red flags that would be relevant on an entrepreneurial environment ecosystem that would also trigger them to say, okay, well, I think I have that under control, but now the situation has caused me to get professional help.
Sure. I would say before you start doing, for example, outsourcing or exporting, you have to decide what your goal is, who you want to hire. There are a lot of actually free resources by the government that can, for example, the Gold Key service. The Sam, you will know more about that by the U.S. Commercial Services. I think you pay $800, they will go investigate this company you want to work with. And they also have use the embassies overseas to help gather information. So what we come in is once you have found someone or a company you want to work with, we will help you design the strategy. What would how to we'll study these people. What is the best approach to build relationship with them, or how to basically, I'm a big believer of win-win situations. So if that, are they really sincere? I will sit in meeting with you and make sure, basic sometimes Chinese are notorious for just speaking the first half of the sentence. You have to figure out what's not being said. So you have to observe based on their tone, their interactions and body language to figure out what is, if they're sincere. But yeah, make use, and also for if you're doing exporting, especially there's a STEP step. I don't know, don't ask me what it means, but the step, it's an SBA grant. In North Carolina, it's managed by NC Economic Development Partnership. So you can actually get a few $1,000s if you to attend trade shows or to pay for translation and these kind of services. So you're not going, especially if you are bootstrapping, you're not going to have to worry about where the money is going to come from. And there's some warning sign would be sometimes, I'll give you an example, have a client who makes robotic surgery equipment. So this Chinese investment firm approached them. In the beginning, right up front, this Chinese company said, well, we're not going to steal your equipment or your technology. And my client asked me what I thought. I said, let me tell you a story. Because there was a guy, it was an ancient store, this guy who stole some money and buried it in the backyard. He thought nobody saw, but somebody saw. But he put a note and says, there's no money here. So that means if somebody says they're not going to cheat you, that's a big flag.
Excellent, thank you. I believe Richard has a question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I've been in school for several years now, and I've been trying to figure out how to transition into um, like transition from the work that I've done, which I've been a maker and I've worked in kitchens, to something like what you do or working with another company. What would be your advice in being able to break to jump fields while I'm in school?
First, I would suggest that you decide, what I do. I only do part of, I'm not, I say international business, but it's, I target Asian market. And I focus on solely strategy, but there are people who go over there, help people, companies find suppliers, clients. So you need to decide what's your specialty is, what you want to focus on. And I think I would say talk to Sam, and they're going to help you do it, not maybe just a one-page business plan, target your market. And I work with mostly medium-sized companies. I don't work with startups because they can't afford me. However, so you need to decide who your target market is. And basically, what you don't have to do everything by yourself. If you may want to outsource some of the work, like, I don't do all the languages. I have a team that specializes in other languages and other cultures. So I would suggest you need to decide what your goal is, what you really want to accomplish. And you can always keep revising it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I see Luke has a question. What are the biggest challenges in getting a Western audience to understand Asian culture? Good question. You can't force people to listen to you. I have sometimes they would pay me for my advice, then they would go about and doing totally different. The biggest challenge is really get to know people, ask questions. I always insist on talking with my future client, at least on the phone, to find out what their goals are and what they want to accomplish. I may not be the best fit. If I'm not, I can recommend somebody else. But I need, in the beginning, I ask questions that shows I know my stuff. And that initial conversation can be very important in building that relation, building that trust, and let them feel that you want to help them. To me, that is my best strategy. And then, of course, once you start working during the process, you keep asking questions and basically keep building relationship with them. I think relationship is also very important. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question. Thank you, Mary. I'd like to pose a question here. So as entrepreneurs, right, we take a lot of these calculated risks. Those you talked about, Mary, but tell us about some of your calculated risks that didn't work out, or maybe give us some examples from some of your clients if you're able to share that might benefit this audience.
Ooh, actually recently, I told my attorney I made a rookie mistake with a client. It was a research project. They wanted to research for a market for Vietnamese population. It was very exciting. It sounded very exciting in the beginning. So I took it on, but I did not, because I try to get my client to sign an agreement right up front, and they need to pay a deposit. But with this one, because of this client was very friendly, we had a good rapport, I thought, oh yeah, she will pay. And she didn't. So it's it's very easy to get carried away because of the excitement. But it's not like I don't have an agreement. I did. Always, I would say, I wouldn't know. Next time, I will insist on having an agreement signed. And even though somebody may seem friendly or they seem knowledgeable, they're good to work with, doesn't mean that they're trustworthy to you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Go ahead and either put it in the chat or let us know. It's add value to this conversation.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sort of off of what Luke asked. What do you think about in reverse, trying to get an American company to work with an Asian company? What would be the hurdles to overcome?
Can you be specific?
Okay, for instance, I have a few friends that work for a Japanese company in North Carolina, and they're one of the things that they lack is the ability to communicate with the manager from Japan that's over there. That's in the company, because he doesn't talk to the people, he doesn't communicate with any of the employees because no one knows his culture or language. He knows some English. I'm just kind of curious, what would be the best steps to take for let's say I wanted to bridge the gap between a Japanese corporation and to be over here in America, or vice versa.
You speak Japanese?
Very little.
Okay, that could be a hurdle because Asians are very, especially Japanese, they're very suspicious. They're, unless you speak fluent Japanese, well, you may have, bring an interpreter with you, but they wanted to be able to communicate with you without any obstacles. But if you have an interpreter that understands Japanese culture, that will be very helpful. But I would suggest that before you go into talk to this, you probably won't be able to get to talk to the manager right in the beginning, because the Asian hierarchy, the person who makes decisions doesn't talk to clients or other people. So find out who the gateway is, the gatekeeper is. Find that person and ask them what is the best way to get to finally meet the manager. But you need to do something in the beginning to work with, somebody maybe a lower rank in the beginning, and then get to know the company, get to know the products. Or unless you have someone who is, a government official can introduce you to this manager.
Okay. So you're saying that it's best to know the community around them first,
Yes.
before you can understand them.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question. Any other questions?
I was gonna talk about more on like what Richard said a little. I feel like, because not saying that I've had like an experience like that, because I'm only a freshman in college and all, but regarding like, because not happening this year because of the COVID and everything, but I tend to visit China a lot, and I got to like have opportunities to like work for people there. And I think that and that time starting off when I was going to China, I was more, since I was born in America and everything, English was more of my like language I speak. But I also had to take many ESL classes when I was in elementary school and all. And regarding like how to connect more with like like Asian or just in general, like people who speak a different language. I think it's best that the best way to kind of do that, like get closer to them, would probably be to advance more in your language before you even think about like, having collaborations with them if you don't even speak a lot more of it. So like me, I had to take a lot of like not even Chinese classes, but I kind of forced myself to teach myself, like what I said before on self-teaching myself Cantonese. I really was, if you really are passionate about like doing international, which to me I am, because language has always been like a part of my life. So I am very passionate about learning it. That's why I decided to like download a lot of like different Cantonese apps and ask people who speak the language already and kind of ask them to kind of tutor you sometimes. And for me, I use an app called Nemo Cantonese. And before I even downloaded and paid for the premium, which accesses all of the like greetings, the like different numbers, letters, alphabets, and all of that, they'll tell you everything. They'll teach you everything. It actually has like my dad, who's a fluent Cantonese speaker, he says that I have improved a lot, and how a lot of my families on my dad's side also said that I improved a lot on my Cantonese. So the fact that it paid off in the end, before I even switched the whole premium and bought the premium packet, I also saw that Nemo, this app Nemo, like it has Mandarin, it has Cantonese, it has Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, all of these different Malaysian, all these different like Asian languages. And it will let you start off like very easy. So the simple like greetings and stuff. And then if you want to keep learning about like more into it and stuff, you can download the premium app, and that'll probably cost like $12.99 or like $10.99 or something along the lines of that. And it will give you like full access to all of like the greetings and everything, which is how I learned from a little bit more of Cantonese. And I did not know a lot about Cantonese because I studied more Mandarin, and my main focus was more on Mandarin. That's why I was able to like kind of just get easily like you. I only know a little bit of the language Cantonese, but I wanted to be able to learn more about it because there are ways, because if I'm going to think about going to a bigger city, and like I said, in New York, there was more Cantonese speakers than Mandarin. So I know that if I'm going to have like collaborations with people, they'll probably also speak Cantonese. So that's why I'm starting to learn it now. That way that when I get more into it, then I'll be able to be like, okay, now I'm fluent in it, and it'd be easier to kind of communicate with them now. So
Thank you.
I really recommend the app Nemo. It has different languages, and you can download the pack and everything, and it'll like show you everything.
Thank you, Tammy. We really appreciate that insight, and hopefully, everyone took away really golden nuggets from this conversation. We have a few more minutes, and I was hoping that we could close out with a final question for Mary. And you've been exposed to so many different things, different countries, different cultures, and maybe give us a few pointers to students and entrepreneurs who are looking to start up or have started up, that would really assist them in preparing to move forward to the next step. That could be starting or moving it to the next step. Maybe just a few comments on that. We'd appreciate it.
Okay, sure, Sam. So when I first started, I was actually still working a full-time job in an airline company. I did that, but I went to the Women's Business Center, and they told me to take a entrepreneur class at WIC-Tech, and I kept on taking that. Spent 6 months going through that. But I wish I had, access to you, people like you, when I was in graduate school. But you need to, I would say, some people say business plans are essential. I would say you at least have an outline what you want to do. Now there's also software. It's not really a software. It's called Business Canvas. And Sam, you can introduce them. So, but you need to have an idea, what you want. I remember the worst thing you can say when people would say, "Who's your customer?" The worst thing you can say is, everybody. So you need to have a target market, what you want. You know, you want to, like Richard, you want to work with Japanese companies. Now, I wanted to add something to that when I said you need to speak Japanese. When people wanted to learn Chinese, I would ask them, why do you want to learn Chinese? They would say, oh, if I speak Chinese, I'll be very successful in China. Well, if that's the case, everybody in China would be very successful. But that's not the case. So language is one thing. Knowing what to say and how to say it is something else. That takes practice, life experience. So I would say, you know, hire an interpreter, a professional interpreter. I'm not saying somebody just bilingual, somebody who understands the language, the intricacies, somebody who understands culture. And that will be a good step, first step. But you're coming back to getting started, I would say, you know, start with a business plan or business canvas. Draw up, that tells you, you know, how you, which market you want to go into, who's your target audience, who's your customer, and how you want to do finance. So have that in place first. That really helped me a lot. So that I would not just go blindfolded and just go about talking to everybody, contacting all the customers. Does that help?
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary Chen. I really appreciate your time, audience. I appreciate you guys attending. It's been very informative. In closeout, again, thank you, Mary, for having all these great information. There's Mary's contact information. We are Launch UNCG. We're in the Office of Research and Engagement. We have the,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
The QR code is my LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So you can email us, call us at Launch UNCG. We are a one-stop shop. We can help in everything entrepreneurial. We can help you connect with the speakers for our entrepreneurial today. We can help you connect if you need any kind of business consulting. We host the National Science Foundation I-Corps, which specifically puts you through a program and pays you to go find out if your idea is good and who would be your potential customer, and do the business canvas model. So we have a lot of resources. Please contact us. And I really appreciate your time. And I wish you guys have a good afternoon.
I don't see Mary's LinkedIn on the.
Oh, it doesn't
Where
work.
is it? Like in the chat? I don't see it in the chat.
No, it's on the screen. It's the QR code. If you scan it, it will take you to my LinkedIn page.
Oh.
It may ask you for my email address.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I see it now. It wasn't loading before, but I took a screenshot of it right now. So.
Okay.
I believe the
you.
invite has information for Launch UNCG and Mary. Jan, can you confirm that? She might be away.
Well, I
I'm
can,
here.
no,
It should be in there. I will make sure that I include it in the note that goes out to everybody when the videos are ready.
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, everybody. I do appreciate everyone's time, and have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know it takes 2 minutes to win it. Are you going to move it online, to do it virtually?
I'm sorry, could you get a little closer to the microphone? I keep losing you.
Okay, so the 2 minutes to win it,
Yes.
it was canceled, but are you going to move it online?
Yes, we are planning on doing it online in the spring.
Yeah, that's a very good program.
Yeah, we enjoy that. We haven't quite figured everything out yet, but we do plan on doing it virtually.
Okay, Mary, I'll catch up with you later. It was an amazing presentation, and thanks again.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Hey Mary, do you think that we can like have some time to later like talk to each other? Because I'm really interested in like the whole translating thing and trying to like advance more into the language.
Sure. Shoot me an email with the time. I think tomorrow works better for me.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.